Ladies and gentlemen, here is a calm, spiritual, and grounded intro in the style of Shi Heng Yi for your motivational speech titled, "The Deborah Anointing is upon you, heaven is releasing you now." There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than words, when the stillness of your soul begins to stir with a purpose you cannot explain, yet you feel it with certainty. You are not who you were yesterday. Something is shifting deep within your spirit, as if heaven itself has placed its hand upon your shoulder and whispered, "Rise, now is the time." The winds are changing, the old weight you carried is dissolving, and you are beginning to hear the subtle call, a call that does not come from this world, but from above. You are being anointed with clarity, with courage, with a divine mandate that no longer allows you to sit in fear or hide in hesitation. This is not just another day. This is not just another message. This is a sacred confirmation. The Deborah anointing is upon you. You are not ordinary. You were never meant to blend in with the silence of the crowd. You are called to lead, to judge with wisdom, to war with honor, and to arise when others sleep. Heaven is no longer waiting. The gates have opened. You are being released, fully, completely, and divinely. There are moments in life when your spirit begins to stir, long before your mind understands what's happening. A divine unease, a spiritual tension begins to build, not out of chaos, but out of awakening. You sense that you're no longer being called to remain still, hidden, or passive. The Deborah anointing does not come to the comfortable. It visits those who have walked through quiet trials, those who have served in silence, and those who have carried burdens without recognition. And then suddenly a shift occurs. The call becomes louder. The inner pull becomes undeniable. You are being chosen to lead in uncommon times. Leadership in the Deborah realm is not based on titles or positions, but on divine alignment. It is a leadership born through prayer, refined in obscurity, and released in obedience. You may have felt overlooked by people, but heaven has been watching your posture. You didn't need to shout to be seen. You didn't need to compete to be recognized. Your discipline, your endurance, your commitment to truth has become the very altar upon which the anointing rests. And now the time has come where God is no longer hiding you. He is appointing you not just to speak, but to lead, to judge rightly, and to stand between chaos and clarity. In uncommon times, common leadership fails. Deborah rose in a time of national crisis. The people were lost, the warriors were silent, the culture had compromised, and yet, in that wilderness of confusion, a woman under a palm tree heard God clearly. She did not wait for permission. She operated from conviction. She did not seek applause. She moved with quiet authority. This is the Spirit coming upon you, not loud but firm, not arrogant but immovable, not reactive, but deeply rooted in wisdom that comes from above. There is a reason you have felt displaced in environments where compromise was normalized. There's a reason you've been uncomfortable with surface-level conversations and shallow pursuits. It's not that something is wrong with you. It's that something deep is being made right within you. You're being tuned to heaven's frequency, and heaven does not raise leaders for applause. Heaven raises leaders to confront disorder, restore righteousness, and call people back to divine truth. This anointing does not always come with clarity at first. It often begins with discomfort. You may feel the tension of being in environments that no longer fit who you are becoming. You may feel misunderstood, even by those close to you. But this is the preparation ground of leaders. You are not being rejected. You are being realigned. What you thought was a delay was actually God drawing lines in the unseen, separating you from distraction, preparing you to lead where others fear to stand. In these uncommon times, the Deborah anointing sets you apart, not because you are perfect, but because you are willing, not because you are the loudest, but because you are listening. The world needs voices that don't echo culture, but speak heaven's wisdom. It needs people who won't be swayed by trends, but will stand anchored in truth. You are being set into position, not to chase influence, but to carry impact. Not to repeat the noise, but to become a still voice that shifts spiritual climates. You are not being trained to impress, but to intercede, not to dominate, but to discern, not to simply rise, but to lift others as you rise. There comes a moment when the external noise no longer carries weight, and what begins to rise within you is a quiet certainty, a voice not your own, yet more familiar than your own thoughts. The Deborah Anointing awakens something sacred within the inner man. It is the voice of God rekindling the authority you were always meant to carry, not authority gained through control or demand, but a divine inner confidence rooted in spiritual identity. You don't need to chase affirmation when the Spirit of the Lord begins to speak through your being. What once felt like insecurity starts to fall away, and what remains is a knowing, a grounded clarity that your steps are being ordered from above. This awakening doesn't arrive with fanfare or a spotlight. It emerges subtly, often in silence, in the midst of reflection, prayer, and surrender. You begin to realize that the questions you once asked, "Who am I? Am I ready? What if I fail?" are being answered without words. The Spirit begins to illuminate the truth of who you are in God's design. The world may still see you through a limited lens, but heaven has always seen the fullness of your calling. The Deborah Anointing comes to remove the veil from your own eyes, so you can see yourself the way God has always seen you, not as overlooked, but as appointed, not as uncertain, but as divinely guided. When God begins to awaken your inner authority, there's a recalibration of your identity. You're no longer moved by external metrics. The validation of people becomes less important. What begins to matter is alignment, alignment with truth, with purpose, with spiritual instruction. The voice of God becomes louder than the voice of fear. This is not arrogance, it's not rebellion, it's spiritual maturity. It's the recognition that when heaven has commissioned you, no earthly title is required. When the Spirit speaks within you, your authority does not come from volume, it comes from vision. Deborah's authority was not given by man. It was not passed down through politics or family lineage. It came through communion with God. Her voice carried weight because it was rooted in revelation. Her words could command armies, not because of eloquence, but because they echoed the divine. This is the kind of voice that is awakening within you. Not a loud voice, but a true one. Not a rehearsed voice, but a surrendered one. This voice will disrupt cycles. It will restore order. It will realign those who are lost, because it is not yours alone. It is a vessel for something higher. This inner authority also brings peace, not the peace of everything going right around you, but the peace of knowing you are in alignment. You can walk through chaos and remain calm. You can be surrounded by noise and still hear clearly, because your center is no longer tied to circumstance. It is anchored in divine communication. You stop chasing signs and start following instruction. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to obey the next step. And each time you do, the authority within you deepens. The voice of God becomes your compass, and others begin to notice, not because of how loud you speak, but because of how deeply your presence speaks without words. As the Deborah Anointing increases, your life becomes a message, your stillness becomes a statement, your discernment becomes sharper, you begin to sense what is unseen, you begin to recognize spiritual climates. You walk into places and feel what needs to shift. You encounter people and know what must be spoken or what must be withheld. This is the sensitivity of the anointed. This is not emotionalism. It is spiritual governance. You are no longer a reactor. You are a responder. You are no longer seeking a role. You are carrying a mantle. There is a weight that comes with divine calling, a sacred responsibility placed not on the surface of your life, but deep within your spirit. The Deborah Anointing does not merely elevate a person. It assigns them to divine justice and prophetic order. You are not being raised for personal greatness. You are being called to become a carrier of heaven's agenda on earth. There is a shift that happens when you realize your presence is not random. Your steps are not unplanned. You've been strategically positioned to confront what others tolerate, to speak what others silence, and to restore what has been dismantled. In a time where the lines between right and wrong have become blurred, the Deborah anointing comes as a plumb line, straight, unwavering, holy. You are not here to conform to culture, but to confront spiritual confusion with clarity and compassion. This anointing rests on those who have cultivated righteousness in secret, those who have surrendered their ego to be shaped into instruments of truth. God does not place this mantle on popularity. He places it on purity. He does not look for charisma. He looks for character, for those who will not compromise when pressure rises. Deborah stood under the palm tree, judging Israel with accuracy and spiritual vision. She did not lean on opinions or political agendas. She leaned into the voice of the Lord, and in doing so, she carried justice where injustice had ruled. She stood in the gap for a nation that had lost its moral compass. She restored prophetic clarity where confusion had reigned. And this is what the anointing upon you is awakening. It is not passive, it is precise, it is not aggressive, it is anointed. It confronts without striving, it speaks truth without ego, it carries the weight of heaven's balance. You begin to notice that you can no longer look at situations casually. Injustice bothers you deeply, not because of emotion alone, but because your spirit is tethered to divine order. You don't just want things to feel better. You want things to be made right. You are stirred when you see broken structures. You are moved when you hear the cry of those without a voice, because the anointing within you is designed to respond. It is wired to bring correction, to heal what has been distorted, and to set people and places back into divine alignment. This does not mean you will be embraced by everyone. Carriers of justice often walk alone, but they do not walk without purpose. God entrusts his most sensitive assignments to those who are willing to carry them in humility. He gives wisdom that cuts through deception. He gives discernment that exposes hidden motives. And with that comes the grace to stand firm, even when misunderstood. Your spirit becomes an atmosphere changer. Your words begin to separate truth from error. Your silence becomes strategic. You no longer speak to win arguments. You speak to shift hearts and to release the clarity of heaven's will. This level of calling requires spiritual maturity. It requires restraint. You will not react to every injustice emotionally. You will respond spiritually. You will discern when to speak and when to remain still. You will learn that justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is steady. Sometimes it is a consistent stand. Sometimes it is walking in peace when the world expects anger. You are being shaped into a vessel of divine judgment, not condemnation, but correction, not punishment, but restoration. The prophetic order you carry will not just influence others. It will first transform you. It will cause you to examine yourself with the same truth you release to others. It will refine your motives. It will purify your intentions, because the Deborah anointing does not allow mixture. It does not permit compromise. It demands integrity in secret and truth in public. And from that sacred place, your life becomes a prophetic instrument through which God can set things in divine order again. There comes a point in your spiritual journey when striving begins to feel foreign. The endless effort to control outcomes, fix problems, or force progress no longer satisfies the soul. The Deborah anointing introduces a shift from operating in human strength to moving in divine strategy. It is the exchange of pressure for precision. It is the moment where heaven downloads wisdom that bypasses logic and speaks directly to your spirit. You are no longer called to hustle your way forward. You are being invited to align, to receive, and to walk in the rhythm of divine timing and supernatural instruction. When Deborah arose, she didn't do so out of ambition. She did not create a plan based on analysis. She moved under the guidance of revelation. Her leadership came from communion, not calculation. This is the realm you are entering, a space where the strategy you need will not come from external sources, but from a place of quiet stillness and surrendered listening. The ideas you need are already in the spiritual realm, waiting to be received, not forced. The clarity you've been searching for will not be found in overthinking, but in learning to trust the flow of divine intelligence being released to you in silence. The enemy has long tried to convince you that breakthrough only comes through struggle, that advancement is only legitimate if it is earned through exhaustion. But heaven's system works differently. God releases blueprints, and those blueprints unlock doors that effort alone could never open. The Deborah Anointing grants access to this higher realm of spiritual architecture. You begin to see things others miss. You recognize timing others ignore. You move when others hesitate, not because you are braver, but because you are led by a wisdom that is not of this world. This is not a passive posture. It is a powerful sensitivity. It requires you to release your grip on what you thought was necessary so you can receive what is truly essential. Divine strategy comes wrapped in obedience. Sometimes the instruction will not make sense in the natural. You may be called to speak when it's inconvenient, to wait when it feels urgent, to act when the timing seems off. But when the strategy is from God, the outcome always carries fruit. It multiplies beyond your capacity. It influences beyond your network. It opens doors beyond your reach. Human struggle often breeds pride or burnout. Divine strategy births humility and effectiveness. You begin to see that the less you try to manipulate outcomes, the more God reveals hidden paths. The solutions you've been searching for in effort are already waiting in obedience. You are no longer reacting to problems. You are responding to purpose. You move with a different rhythm. You plan with a different mindset. You speak with a different weight, because your actions are no longer random. They are refined by revelation. In this place of strategy, your time becomes more sacred. You don't entertain distractions. You don't give your energy to every battle. You understand that clarity protects your power. What God gives you to do is specific, and trying to add more to it only dilutes the potency of your impact. The Deborah Anointing brings focus. It sharpens your vision. It teaches you that less is often more when the hand of God is on it. You may say less, but your words carry weight. You may do less, but your actions produce lasting results. As this strategy begins to unfold in your life, you'll start recognizing divine patterns. You'll see how certain delays were actually redirections. You'll understand that some closed doors were not rejection. They were protection. You'll begin to trust the whispers of God more than the noise of urgency. You'll no longer depend on hustle culture. You'll operate in heaven's culture, a way of being that honors rest, values timing, and walks in the wisdom of what to do, when to do it, and how to do it without striving for applause or permission. There is a divine timing that cannot be rushed. A sacred moment when heaven no longer holds you in the place of preparation, but begins to release you into movement. The Deborah Anointing marks this transition with clarity and spiritual urgency. You are not being stirred randomly, you are being summoned. Your waiting season was not a delay, it was formation, and now the shift is taking place. You are being released into active assignment. The mantle that has been placed upon you in silence is now being activated publicly, not for recognition but for divine execution, not for noise but for impact. You are stepping into the assignment with a new awareness of who you are and whose you are. This is not about doing more. It is about being fully present to the task God has specifically aligned with your purpose. You don't need to carry every load, fight every battle, or chase every opportunity. What is yours is sacred. It has been tailored for your hands, for your voice, for your influence. And when heaven releases you, There is a supernatural acceleration that takes place. Doors open not because you pushed them, but because your obedience unlocked them. Relationships align not because you networked for them, but because they are part of your ordained path. Deborah did not rise because of popular opinion. She rose because heaven had ordained her for that specific time. She was released to lead when others refused to stand. Her assignment was not reactionary, it was prophetic, and so is yours. You are not being released to replicate what others have done. You are being released to fulfill what only you can carry. The spiritual environment has changed. The assignments have shifted, and heaven is no longer asking you to prepare. Heaven is commanding you to move. This is not a gentle nudge. It is a divine release. In this place of release, hesitation begins to fade. Fear begins to lose its grip. You are not moving in your own strength. You are being carried by something deeper, an invisible current of divine alignment. Things begin to come together in ways you never imagined, not because of force, but because the spiritual atmosphere is now in agreement with your movement. You are not just doing tasks, you are fulfilling prophecy. Every step, every word, every action begins to hold weight in the unseen realm. Angels are assigned, favor begins to surround you, provision starts to manifest in unexpected places, but with release comes responsibility. You are not being sent out to wander. You are being positioned strategically like a key in the right lock. Your presence will activate rooms. Your voice will shift decisions. Your spirit will carry peace into confusion. You are not just showing up. You are being sent, and those who are sent carry a different authority than those who went on their own. You don't need to fight for space. You create it. You don't need to compete. You carry clarity. The Deborah Anointing ensures that your release is not chaotic but ordered, not scattered but surgical. This assignment is not always grand in appearance. Sometimes the most powerful acts of obedience are quiet, hidden from public view, but deeply disruptive in the spiritual realm. Don't underestimate the assignment because of its size. Assignments are measured in eternal impact, not human recognition. Your yes carries generations. Your movement will make way for others. Your obedience will open gates for those who were waiting for someone to lead. You have been prepared for such a time as this, and now that time is here. You are no longer being asked to sit in waiting. You are being released into motion, into mission, into mandate. The release will not always feel convenient. It may stretch your comfort zone. It may cost you familiar routines, but the grace to move will match the call to move. The doors you are walking through now were once impossible, but they respond to anointing. They respond to divine timing. They respond to obedience, and you are not moving alone. Heaven is moving with you. The backing of heaven surrounds you. The favor of God precedes you. The timing is now because the world is in need. The cry of the earth has reached the ears of heaven, and heaven is releasing you in response to that cry. There is a sound that shifts the atmosphere before anything is seen. It is not always loud, but it carries spiritual weight. The Deborah Anointing places a mantle on your voice, not just the sound of your words, but the frequency of your spirit. You begin to realize that what you say, and even what you carry in silence, holds the authority to break cycles of delay, to confront spiritual stagnation, and to activate movement in those who have been spiritually paralyzed. Your voice is no longer just communication. It becomes a vessel of divine instruction. It begins to speak into realms that others cannot access because it is anointed by heaven, and it carries the breath of God behind it. Deborah did not need to shout to be heard. Her words carried weight because they were saturated with obedience, wisdom, and timing. She spoke, and warriors arose. She gave direction, and battles were won. This is the power that rests upon those who carry the Deborah Anointing. When you speak, confusion begins to scatter. When you speak, what has been dormant begins to awaken. It is not merely about eloquence or articulation. It is about the spiritual alignment behind the words. You speak as one who has been with God. You decree not from emotion, but from revelation. This anointing is not limited to public platforms. It begins in secret places. It is forged in prayer, in stillness, in moments where you wrestle with God more than with man. It is refined in situations where your silence was misinterpreted, but your spirit was being prepared. And now, as heaven places its weight upon your voice, the authority you carry is no longer for you alone. It is for regions, it is for families, it is for generations. Your voice becomes a key, a spiritual catalyst, a force that does not conform but transforms. With this anointing comes a deeper responsibility. You begin to discern what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. Not every moment demands a response. Not every conversation requires your involvement. But when God speaks through you, it disrupts delays and activates assignments. It causes the timid to rise. It causes the stagnant to move. It breaks the power of spiritual sleep. You are not speaking opinions. You are declaring alignment with heaven. And that level of speech carries weight not only in the ears of men, but in the realm of the spirit. There will be moments where your voice is resisted, not because it is wrong, but because it is right. Truth is often met with opposition. But when you carry the Deborah anointing, your words do not return void. They accomplish what they were sent to do. They confront the spirit of delay that has held people in spiritual cycles for years. They call forth identity. They command motion. They provoke decision. You are not just a voice. You are a trumpet in the hands of God, sounding clarity in a time of spiritual fog. There is also power in your quietness. Sometimes the most anointed voice is expressed through presence. You walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts, not because of your status, but because of the oil you carry. You don't have to announce your authority. It is felt. Heaven backs your presence. Angels respond to your alignment. Chains begin to weaken because you showed up in obedience, carrying the sound of breakthrough even in your silence. That is the Deborah anointing at work. It does not seek applause. It seeks impact. It speaks when led, and it remains still when instructed. You will begin to notice that your words pierce through what is superficial. People will be drawn to you not for flattery, but because your voice carries deliverance. There is healing in your tone. There is freedom in your cadence. There is order in your instruction. The prophetic weight you carry is not always dramatic. It is often gentle but undeniable. It speaks with a kind of calm authority that awakens destiny in those who have forgotten who they are. You do not speak to impress. You speak to awaken. You do not speak to be heard. You speak to release what heaven is saying in this hour.